You're listening to the My Simplified Life podcast, and this is episode number 24. Welcome to the My Simplified Life podcast, a place where you will learn that your past and even your present don't define your future. Regardless of what stage of life you're in, I want you to feel inspired and encouraged to pursue your dreams, simplify your life, and start taking action today. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, and I'm excited to share my stories and life lessons with you while taking you on my own journey. This is My Simplified Life. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, and I am so excited to introduce you today to Daniel Romeros of Dr. Podcasts. He is literally the man who makes me sound so good on this podcast and is the secret weapon behind so many other podcasts. When I say so many, I'm talking over 3,000 other episodes. Armed with a bachelor's degree in recording arts, Daniel fell into podcasting, much like I did, and once he started working with podcasters, well, the rest is history. To me, Daniel is a magician. He edits episodes and makes people sound so perfect and does it all with total ease. Full disclosure, Daniel and I have been working together for over a year. We met while both working separately on a podcast and quickly learned that we enjoy working together. We bring different specialties to the table and have created a pretty seamless workflow so that our clients just have to create their content, hit record, and send us the file. We literally do the rest for them. Together, Daniel and I produce 6 podcasts and then work on more separately. We have been labeled the Dream Team because we simply get things done, and we get them done quickly, professionally, and with high quality. And no, I did not make that label up. Daniel is going to share how he fell into the podcasting world, some of his best tips for you if you want to start a podcast, and he's breaking down what really goes into editing, and it's a lot. I have the utmost respect for Daniel and what he does, and I truly know that he makes my life and the lives of so many easier, and I, for one, appreciate him. I don't truly outsource much of anything in my business, but I have outsourced my editing since day one to Daniel. I trust him, I know him, and I know that he genuinely cares about my podcast and that I am giving you all nothing but the best quality. Whether you're thinking about launching a podcast, outsourcing your editing with your current podcast, or even want to learn about editing, Daniel has got something for you. I am so happy to bring Daniel out from behind the scenes to the front of the microphone. So grab your headphones and prepare for your lesson on podcasting. Hi, Daniel.
Hey, how's it going?
So good. I'm so excited to have you on since our lives are really just all Voxer and Trello boards, and it's nice to get to actually talk to you.
Yeah, right. It's actually pretty nice and cool. We haven't actually met in person, but we talk all the time through our little platforms and stuff like that. And it's
I know it feels like we're I don't know. It's not like we're like telecommuters. I feel like I know you. I know your girlfriend, you know?
Yeah, we know each other's families basically. And we're just, we never actually met, but we talk all the time. So that's pretty cool.
And so for everyone who's listening, can you please introduce yourself to them because they don't know who you are?
Yeah, exactly. Well, my name is Daniel Romeros. I am the owner of Dr. Podcasts. And I've been doing this for quite a while, since I think back to 2013. And I've started quite a bit of different avenues of kind of relevant industry. I started off in records, so I was doing music for a while. And then when I was going to school, I went to a school in Full Sail University, if anybody knows that school out there in Orlando, a great school. But basically, I was going there for music. I got my bachelor's in recording arts, and then I teamed up with my roommate while I was in film for a bit. So after school, I went to Paramount Pictures to work out there for a little bit. Great experience. It was really nice. But fast forward, I kind of just came out here to Austin, and I was really trying to just figure out what I really wanted to do. And I found myself just picking up some clients really with podcast editing, and it wasn't really like my goal, I guess you would say. It wasn't really like something I was like, oh yeah, that's something I plan to do, but it really just started to pick up really nicely, and it's been pretty amazing how everything has just been working for me on my end. And I might be getting ahead of myself with questions you may be having, but that is me in the long run. Yeah, that is me kind of in a very fast explanation, if you want to say that. But
so I love that you kind of fell into podcasting like I did. Like we weren't out to come into the podcast world. It just sort of fell in our laps, and the clients came, and you enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty funny because, like I said, it wasn't something I really was planning to do, or even I actually never even knew what a podcast was. Like back then, I would say back in 2013, 14, I had no idea what a podcast was. If someone asked me what a podcast was, I'd be like, I don't even know what you're saying.
I didn't know in 2018, so we're good.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah. But it's been really amazing, and I do love listening to everyone's conversations and stuff like that. You learn so much from it, just hearing what people have to say, and it's kind of just like you're getting paid to listen to valuable information.
I know that's how I felt with the first podcast that I was hired on to do show notes for. I was already a listener, so
yeah,
it was like, this is fantastic. I'm now getting paid to listen to my favorite podcast.
Right,
like,
exactly.
Life is good.
Yeah, and it's not always about just being paid too. Like that's not what we're just doing. It's actually genuinely like a really cool thing that we're doing. In terms of with the podcast and just helping people out, because that is definitely, I would imagine this is how you feel too, but we feel very passionate about helping people and getting their content to sound great, and just getting them set up to be optimized for just having basically the top podcast that they can have, and stuff like that. And that's just something I really enjoy doing, and this kind of avenue of services, it's really good. I really like doing it, and I really actually enjoy doing it too. So yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. And so I think we're now working on including my own like 6 podcasts together.
Yeah.
So, and what I really love about working with you is that you enjoy what you do on the editing side. I want nothing to do with editing. And I love what I do on the show notes and the guest, sourcing and booking and all of that stuff. And you want nothing to do with what I do.
Exactly. Yeah. It's funny. I actually started doing some of the services that you were doing for a bit. And oh man, I was not liking it.
And this is why we are called, and I'm going to boost us together, we've been called the Dream Team.
Yeah, I love it. That's definitely what I would consider us too. Yeah, it's crazy because, I was doing some of the things that you do, and I was it was a test run for me too. I was trying to figure out if that's what I really wanted to do, or just different ways to, add on to my services really. But I'm not going to say I hated it. It was very time consuming for me, especially if I was doing all the other stuff, because editing, like the editing stuff that I do, it's very, very time consuming. There's a lot to it. And if I'm having other elements that I'm doing, that certain stuff that you do, it's just more on my workload, and it didn't work out really for me. So
can you share a little bit about what goes into it? Because I know that editing takes like 2 to 3 times the length of an episode.
Yeah.
And people don't quite understand like why editing would be so expensive, and it can be. I know it varies just like everything else in the podcasting world. But what goes into editing, because you're listening to the entire episode and then some.
Yeah, so there's a lot. Probably not enough to go in this whole episode. I would definitely think there should be a lot more topics of, in the future that we could talk about, but there's some fundamentals to getting a podcast to, sound great, being optimized for all the platforms and stuff like that. But the main thing is very much just starting with the source. So when you're getting there's all these things of like getting a microphone, knowing what program you're going to use, the room that you're going to be recording in. Those things are very important factors that come into the part of actually recording. And then the actual part of the editing, that's a whole different process, because you're basically acting as an engineer at that point. So there's so many things to account for. It's like when you're editing to try to keep the conversation to sound fluent, making sure everything flows nicely, no dead spaces, taking out edits and stuff like that. This episode that you're listening to right now, there's definitely been some edits that you're not going to hear because, well, this is going to be me editing it. So there's parts that you're not, maybe we could do like a behind the scenes of, things that we're not in this episode that you're listening to now to kind of just get an idea of what's going on. But yeah, there's a lot of things to keep in mind, just, making sure everything sounds fluent and taking out the mistakes and stuff. And then you go on to the whole like mixing and mastering, making sure all the levels sound great, just making sure everything sounds clear, that when people start talking too low, that you make sure that that's turned up. If people are talking too loud, you got to make sure you turn that down. And other things too, is in terms of like noise in the background, you got to make sure you taking that stuff out. And this is all subjective too. But if you want a really high quality podcast, you want to keep these things in mind. But yeah, even after the mixing and mastering and making sure everything sounds great, then there's the other part of it is just like packaging it all up, exporting it to a certain format, putting all the ID3 tagging in. So there's quite a bit. And then you can go into the uploading too. And that's a whole other part too. There's a whole little bits of parts in here that, is very time consuming. And there's quite a bit that goes on.
So for someone who wants to start a podcast, we've created for all of you lucky listeners, we've created a podcast launch checklist, and it's really an easy DIY, best practices, equipment that Daniel recommends, platforms that I recommend.
Yeah.
It's just a great combination of all of it. And one of the things that I love that you do with all of your clients, myself included, is that you go on a Zoom call before they even start recording and you look at their setup and help them.
Yes.
So you don't go down this rabbit hole of sounding awful and then switching all of a sudden. You can actually sound perfect from the get-go.
Yeah, exactly. Well, see, the thing is not only do I want to help people, but if they're having me do stuff, that's kind of going back on me that the quality is I want it to sound good because that's, in a sense, that's my product too, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, it's a reflection of you.
It's my work. So I want to make sure everything sounds great. So that way people are like, hey, where did you get that? It sounds really great. Who do you use or what are you doing? And they'll most likely say, oh, I use Daniel. And then that's what I want to do is make sure everything sounds really good. So that way it kind of just projects on the kind of services that I provide. And, I like doing it too, because it helps people just kind of understand what they're doing too. When I go on a call with somebody is just to set them up and make sure they have everything correct and see if there's any things that they can improve on, any upgrades and things like that. So yeah, I really enjoy doing that. And it's helpful for me and the person I'm on the call with.
Absolutely. Because most people, I never recorded before, unless it was like a video for IG or something on my phone. I didn't have a microphone and, a setup in my fancy walk-in closet.
Yep.
So it's brand new for so many. What are your favorite or your best tips to give someone who's just starting off?
Well, best tips, I would say my main points is going to be the microphone that you're using, the room that you're in, and just taking, those are really the two biggest ones, to be honest, is just the microphone you're using in the room that you're in, because the quality of microphone is going to help with the quality of the sound. But another thing to keep in mind is the room itself. The room that you're in plays a big part of the way the sound recording is going to be, because if you're in a very reflective or like echoey room, that's going to go right into the microphone, and it's going to, no matter how much of a high quality mic you have, it's still going to just essentially downgrade the quality of the recording. So if you have, some sound insulation and stuff like that in your room, that you can control those reflections and stuff, that's going to help dramatically. But that's a big process to try to figure out, obviously more money. So there's an instant solution that what you're doing as well is going into the closet, because sure enough, in the closet, there's a lot of clothes everywhere. And what those clothes do is it dampens the sound. It basically stops the reflections from hitting the walls and going back into the microphone. So that's a pretty big little hack, if you want to call it that, but it definitely helps with the quality of the sound. So you're not having crazy echoes and stuff like that. But yeah, the microphone's definitely going to be another big one. It's you want to use a microphone that has pretty good frequency response and pickups and all that stuff.
And I think that people would be surprised to know how many big podcasts actually are recorded in a closet.
Yeah.
Like, that's the big secret, everyone. We are all in our closets,
In the
except for
closet.
Daniel. He's like got a nice studio set up and everything. He's all
Yeah.
professional. But I am in my closet surrounded by clothes and shoes.
Yeah. That's for sure. There's other things too, and when it comes to that is how close you are to the microphone and stuff like that. Like I'll even do it right here for demonstration purposes. So I'm kind of going away from my microphone. You could tell the audio is starting to sound not the best, right? So, and when I start getting closer, it starts to sound more full and rich. And that's another important thing to keep in mind too, is that you want to keep pretty close to your microphone. That's another, little tip for just making sure your quality sounds good and stuff like that.
Uncomfortable close. Just so everyone understands how close, like you're not like on top of it, but it feels like you are on top of it.
Yeah, basically. I'm a few inches away from, well, I would say probably like 2 inches from my mic. But see, there's so many things that goes into that though, because the closer you get, the more likely you might distort your audio. So, the audio might start getting distorted if you're too close. So you have to keep in mind your audio levels and just making sure when you are that close to, look at your levels and adjust the volume or the gain of the input on the recording so it doesn't get distorted, because you don't want distortion. Distortion is not fun.
And if you guys don't understand what he just said and you're going to start with him, he will show you step by step what all of that means, because I had no idea. I'm like, gain what? There's a button on my mic. I don't know.
Yeah, there's so much to learn about it, but the main thing is it's not actually really difficult. It's just learning about it once, and then it's basically you learn it and you know about it. You continue to decide if you want to tackle it on your own or just have someone else, worry about it. But some of these steps are really simple. It's just there's quite a few things to learn. That's basic with anything, really. Anything you're getting into, there's going to be a few steps to learn, but it'll just come back into, repetition and all that stuff to just know what anyone's talking about.
Yeah. So I want to say, so when it comes to launching a podcast, I'm not sure everyone quite understands like how much work really goes into it. You're creating content, you're scheduling time to record either solo or an interview, but then you have to edit it. So whatever you just did, if you just did a 30-minute episode, it's now going to take another hour to edit it. And then there's show notes, which will, for a 30-minute episode, take another hour. Then there's graphics. So a lot goes into a podcast. And I want to say, this is why I work with you on my podcast and why people hire us, because a 30-minute episode, how many hours goes into that just for us to produce it? It's got to be 2, 3, like 4 hours at least of work.
You mean from like complete start to complete like publish?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine so. There's a lot of work that goes into all of that, just from start and then having, going through all the processes, having edited it sound nice, package it, upload it, publish it, all the graphics and stuff. I would imagine that would take quite a while. For me, I've been doing this for a while on the editing side and the engineering side. I've been doing it for a while, so I can actually get it done pretty fast. Like I've done a big amount of episodes so far.
Like over 2,500.
I would say probably more now. Yeah.
And then you need to update your website.
Yeah, exactly. That's one thing I've been wanting to do. I just been quite busy actually. But yeah, I've done so much already, and I just kind of already know what I'm looking for. Like, honestly, like I could even just look at the waveforms and just know what kind of needs an edit already, just like what even words are without even hearing them. But I don't do that, but I could. Like, I know what I'm looking at already. But I'm really fast and efficient with everything because, as you go, you find ways to make things go faster and improve and stuff like that. So for me on the engineering side, I'm fairly quick with producing stuff out. But someone else that's starting or, has a little bit of experience with it, they still might be, it might take them a good while to just making sure everything sounds great. And there's a lot of double guessing that goes on when you're very first starting out. A lot of people are like unsure if this is how it should be or if it sounds good. So they're always double checking and, just making sure it's like perfect, like a perfectionist, I guess I would say. And that takes a lot of time. When you have a lot of experience, you already know your process and you know what's good and you just knock it out really fast. But for someone who's starting, it could take quite a long time.
Well, I have to say, I think that's why my biggest recommendation if you start a podcast is to outsource the editing.
Yeah.
So you don't have to learn that and you can focus on your content that you're creating because that's the bigger deal for the host.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. And I think even though my services are on the other side, I think that yours is the most important because you're going to produce something that's quality and you take away this time and this learning curve from a host who can then focus on the important stuff.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of things like you can produce a show fairly easy. Like right now we're talking in terms of having a pretty good high quality podcast. Like if you were just wanting to just record whatever, not worry about anything, you can literally like use your phone and stuff to record audio. It's not going to probably sound the best, but there are some things that you can do that are really simple, bare bones stuff and just push out a show. And, that might not actually take time. You might not even really care for editing too much or anything like that, which is all completely doable. But if you want something that's going to be really high quality, where people are not going to have to turn up the volume or turn it down at certain points and making sure, that they can actually hear it, you want things to be fluent and just basically a professional sounding podcast where you pop on every episode already knowing what you're going to expect to hear. That's the kind of things that you want to probably send off to someone who has a lot of experience doing that to get a show that's like that.
Well, it also doesn't take away from your content either. You don't want someone listening and having to focus on something else other than what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I think that plays an important part.
Right.
What would be, if you have favorite platforms, I'm sure, because I do for sure. Mm-hmm. What would be your favorite platforms for recording, hosting, if you have any? Like what would be your favorites? What's your favorite microphone?
Yeah.
Can you list off some of your faves?
Yeah. Well, those could all be, so many different choices. With microphones, there's so many choices. But when it comes to, I would just answer that in terms of clients, because a lot of the stuff that I'm using is very sophisticated stuff. Like it's definitely industry professional,
Top tier.
It takes a lot of learning to kind of learn what I'm doing. So I would just answer that in the terms of like people starting out or someone, looking to start getting into podcasting. So right now, I definitely recommend people to use the Blue Yeti microphone. I think that's what you're using right now. And
that's what I use. Yep.
Yeah, I just got one too. And because I have plans to like make some videos and stuff like that. And so I got that microphone to actually, show people how to use it. But that's one of the microphones that I definitely recommend because first of all, it's USB. So you just plug it straight into your computer and you don't have to worry about any external hardware and stuff like that. You just plug it in. It basically works. You got to make sure you have the input set in your settings and stuff like that. But you plug it in. And one of the main things on that microphone is there is it's called the gain knob, but for simpler explanation, it's a volume knob. So it's the input of the recording that's going into the computer. So when I was talking earlier about making sure your audio levels are not distorting, if they are distorting, you could just turn that knob on the actual microphone itself, and that will reduce the distortion. So that's something I really love about that microphone, and it sounds really good in general too, but that is one of the features I really love about that microphone because some of the USB microphones don't have that feature, and it's a nightmare trying to find a way to turn down the audio levels without having people distort. So
it's pretty.
It's pretty. Yeah, it's pretty nice.
And comes in a variety of colors. Mine is white.
Yeah, mine's all black, and I really love it. It fits in here really nicely. But yeah, that's the microphone I definitely recommend. There's other options too, so you can like get an audio interface, which is what I'm using. But that's like going on a whole nother learning curve or a different option of using gear and stuff. So right now, I would just say use the Blue Yeti. In terms of recording, this actually depends if you are on a Mac or if you're on the PC. So if you're on a Mac, all the Macs actually come with a free program, which is called GarageBand, and it's fairly easy to use. That's definitely what I would say to use if you are recording solo shows, or just pre-recorded content because it's fairly easy to use and sounds pretty good for what it is. If you're on a PC, then I would suggest using something like Audacity. And that's a free program as well that people can use to record. And the reason why I suggest using these platforms, because there are other things that like using QuickTime or like if you're on Zoom or stuff like that. But QuickTime, you can't really see the waveforms. You can't really see what's going on. So that's why I recommend using one of the ones like GarageBand or Audacity, because you can actually see what's going on. You can make little small edits if you want to. And it's more effective to use those kind of platforms when recording. And yeah, that's what I would say is my favorite for people starting off. That's what I recommend them using. If you're looking to like engineer and like do the stuff actually like super professional, you could actually still use that stuff I just said, but there are some other things that I use. Like I use Pro Tools, which is like an industry professional software recording program that you can use for a whole bunch of things. But that's going on a whole different level of.
Yeah, we're going to keep it simple.
Simple, yeah. We just want things simple. That's what we like. We like simple.
Yeah. And if you take out the outsourcing part, doing a podcast is essentially, it's almost free because you can use all of these platforms. Like I use GarageBand for interviews such as this. We're using Zencaster. That's also free. The host, I use Libsyn, which is like $10 a month, I think. So that's nothing. And then that's it. So really for $10 a month, you can have a podcast if you're not outsourcing anything.
Right. Yeah. No, that's true. And Zencaster, this is what we're on right now. And this is one of the ones I definitely would prefer. I know a lot of people go to Zoom for their recording of their conversation. And Zoom, I just find the quality in Zoom is just not really great because there's a fast explanation for that. It's basically the audio is going through a bandwidth. The recording is going through the internet, so it just doesn't sound great. But on Zencaster, what it's actually doing is recording on the computer first, and then it's uploading to the cloud. So Zencaster sounds better. The only drawback is Zoom. Actually, you can record video. So if you're looking to get video content with the recording for your podcast, then Zoom might be, what you want to go with. But if you're just looking for audio quality, really good audio quality, Zencaster is definitely the way to go. And there's some other ones too, but I think Zencaster is the one that I found to be the most stable.
I love it. It's nice and easy. And if you're recording from your closet, you might not want the video anyway. So
Exactly.
It works out for me perfectly. Now, if you're a guest, because I have obviously with the pitching side, I have a lot of clients who are guests but are not podcast hosts themselves. Would you say that you can just use your headset that's on your phone, or would you recommend investing in a microphone if you're going to continue doing interviews?
If people have access to, upgraded microphones, it's always suggested for sure. But if you're being the guest on the listener side, whoever the host is, their listeners are already going to, assume that the person that's being interviewed, they're probably just like a normal person as well. And, it's not really expected for them to have really great quality. It's not really a
must have. It's just
a must have.
Good to have.
It's just good to have if you are yourself. Like for me, being as a guest, I want my audio to sound good because that's literally what my business is about, is having good quality audio and all that stuff. So it's important for me for sure. But someone else that, that's not really relevant to audio or video or anything like that, it won't be expected for them to have great audio or microphone for them being as a guest. But what you could do is when you are the host is just to make sure that, just to tell the guests, regardless of what kind of microphone they have, is just to kind of just make sure that there's no background noise going on, and stuff like that. If they do have a good microphone, just make sure they're actually using the good microphone, because sometimes when you're using like a laptop or something, the microphone will actually default to the onboard microphone. And that one doesn't sound great if you're using a really good microphone like the Yeti or something. So sometimes it would just be good to just check with the guest to see if they're actually using the good microphone. And the other things too is like make sure there's no background noise and make sure they're close to the mic, and, all that stuff. Make sure their audio levels are okay, and just small things like that.
Now, what if somebody wants to get into editing and do what you do? Do you have any recommendations on where they should start, or a course or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I kind of had the head start with just like going to school and stuff. But, honestly, in today's age with like technology and, all these different places to find things, YouTube's a really good place to start learning about doing things. But if you want a more sophisticated, just straight to the point, just straight answers, quick, learn everything, you could always do things like courses and stuff like that. And, this is something that I'm actually in the works in as well. I'm in the process of making a course for starting podcasts.
Yes.
Yeah. So people who are looking to either put out a podcast, like be the podcast host and stuff like that, I'm going to be building a course for people to learn how to do that. Or as well, I'm going to be building a course for people who are looking to engineer podcasts. So yeah, that'd be a really ideal way to learn, just quick, really fast, straight to the point would be using like something like a course. But if you are there's a whole bunch of available content out there. And one of my biggest ones is going on YouTube and, just seeing what other people are doing and their practices and stuff like that.
Did you launch your YouTube channel?
I have technically, but I haven't uploaded much to it yet. I really plan to have a whole bunch of stuff coming out real soon. I've just been in the works of basically just trying to get all the quality things in order, just like making sure, because I'm getting like professional cameras, lighting and all that stuff. So I'm just trying to quality control all that stuff to, make sure everything looks good before I start pushing out stuff. I know a lot of people would probably say, oh, don't perfect it before posting. You got to just start pushing things out now so you can get things going, and which is actually really true. But for me, I think it just makes sense for me, since my business is about doing things that are high quality, that I need to post things that are going to be high quality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a little different, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm in the works of that. I definitely will be having things coming out real soon. So it's really exciting. And yeah, I'll look forward to it myself. So it's going to be pretty fun.
So is the name of your YouTube channel Dr. Podcast, or is it under your name?
Yes.
So people know where to go.
It should be Dr. Podcast. Yeah.
Dr. Podcast. Okay. And we'll put it in the show notes and everything. We'll link to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then where else can people find you if they would like to work with you?
Well, I'm on my website. It's www.drpodcast.com. That is basically my main place right now. I am on Instagram and Facebook. Anytime I post anything social media wise, it'll just be linked to my Facebook and Instagram. So it'll probably just be the same stuff. But yeah, right now people can find me on drpodcast.com. That's where I have all my information about my services, what I do, and all that good stuff.
I love it.
Yeah.
And you guys can hear the quality from this podcast. You better go back and edit this one like to the shiznick, so it's good.
Yes. And like I said, there's a lot of edits in this that probably, or no one's going to hear, but maybe we'll do it.
No, don't tell them that. It was perfect. Like we recorded it. It was perfect. There were no edits needed, and you just made it sound even prettier.
Exactly. Not edited one bit.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. And we're definitely going to get together and brainstorm some more topics around podcasting and best practices for you all. So Daniel will be back. You'll be hearing more from him.
Absolutely. There's so much to talk about with this stuff. So absolutely.
Maybe we can do a behind the scenes on some of our clients or something someday.
Yeah, we probably have to ask them if that's okay first.
We won't name names.
Yeah, exactly.
I hope you grabbed some of these amazing podcast takeaways today, and I am so appreciative of Daniel taking the time to join me. If you are needing editing expertise, I can't recommend Daniel enough. He is incredible to work with, and I promise he'll make your podcasting life easier. If you're thinking about launching a podcast, remember that you have something that the world needs to hear, and only you can share it in your unique way. You're in charge of your future, so make it happen today. Chat with you next week, my friends.